of the audience. This is also being live streamed on Facebook, so we're really excited about that. We're going to have a few words from some of our folks that are co-hosting this evening. We'll have Andrea Gosgross.
We're not the first one.
I'm so glad I did it while it was on TV. Andrea Goss is the president of our Tillamook chapter of AAUW, and I'd like to have her come up and just thank you all this evening.
Thank you all. AAUW, American Association of University Women, and we have lots of projects that we do to help women and girls, both locally and federally, and try and do some things on legislation, and we do scholarships, and we do tech trek and things to help women and girls in this county and around the state. So one thing we want to do is educate you all on these candidates and have you know who you're voting for and why you're voting for them come in 3 or 4 weeks. So welcome and thank you for coming.
And then, you don't want to, Joe?
Hi, everybody.
Headlight Herald, co-host of this evening's event. They did a lot to help us get the word out, and I really appreciate it. And so tonight's format's going to be a little different if you've been here in years past. We want to give each position its due time, so we're going to start with, interestingly, the governor's race. Patrick Starnes sent a spokesman to provide a statement this evening. He will not be taking questions, as you would well imagine. Candidates don't usually want that to happen. But he is here just to let you know that Mr. Starnes is running and what his platforms are. And so we'll start with that. Then we'll move into the Congressional district race. And they'll have their time to both do their statements of introduction, question and answers, and then we'll move into the kind of the final wrap up for each one. Then we'll move down to District 32. Then we'll do District 10 for state reps. And then we'll wrap up with our county commissioners. And again, the format's 3 minutes for their introductory statements, 2 minutes for their wrap up, and they all have 1 minute to answer the questions, unless it's particularly complex, and we can add a little bit of time into that. Now, they would say they're all complex, but that's not how it's going to work this evening. So I will let you start and make sure your mic's on.
I believe it is. You guys can hear me in the back, yes. I'm Oda Schmidt. I'm from Pacific University, and my governor candidate, Patrick Starnes, unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. He's down in Medford, so he sent me up here to just kind of give a brief introduction of him. Mr. Starnes has been working in public service for 30 years. He has served on 2 different school boards, and he was a cabinet maker for 30 years. And he went to Umpqua Community College and got his degree of history from the University of Oregon. His main platforms based on manufacturing jobs in Oregon. He believes specifically in the wood industry and our timber industry that we can provide more finished products coming out of Oregon instead of just shipping our raw materials out of the state. And then his main campaign platform is the issue of campaign finance. In the campaigns you see how we have a bunch of corporate money and the likes flowing into campaigns today, and he believes that the political game would be a lot more fair if we just had donations limited to $100 per person per candidate. So those are his 2 main campaign platforms, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys turn out and vote in November. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
So there are materials for Mr. Starnes in the back. Is that correct, Otis?
Correct.
Okay, because he may have to move out a little bit early. He's got to go back to Forest Grove. So now we'll bring up our Congressional District 5 candidates.
Sure.
So for the benefit of the candidates, we will show during this period you added in a 1 minute warning, so there's 3 minutes. You'll get a 1 minute warning, a 30 second, and a 15. Okay, so we're sticklers about this, I need you to know. So, who would like to start?
I'm Marvin Sanis. I do this every 2 years. I'm the Pacific Green Party candidate for District 5. And I do this, I filed to run. Oregon has a very good ballot access. It's very easy to be a candidate. And I run every 2 years so that I can talk about some things that neither ruling party can talk about if they want to get your votes. This is the 2017 federal budget, and the big blue is defense spending. Now, sometimes people ask me, well, what's that got to do with Tillamook County? This is coming right out of our district. Most of us pay about 1/3 of what we make in federal, state, local taxes. And our infrastructure is crumbling around us. We don't have a bullet train. We've needed a 3rd bridge across the Columbia for decades. And these things go on. And what is so bad about this is we don't even talk about it. Every other year at the campaign season, we get a group like this that talks about these things. I want to show you another one. This week we began our 18th year at war with the planet's 5th poorest country. Now ask yourself, how can the United States, with this huge military industry, be at war with the planet's 5th poorest country? They don't have uniforms, they don't have logistics, they don't have a command structure. This is the opium. 93% of the planet's opium comes out of this country. There's another interesting number. I just found this out. The cocoa crop in Colombia, 2016 and 2017, has gone from 93,000 hectares planted to 172,000 hectares planted. In Salem, we have a heroin epidemic. We have 1,300 kids homeless, and it's a direct result of the heroin epidemic. Their parents cannot afford to maintain a household and maintain a habit of, the 3rd year is several $100s a day. And I have a friend who drives a school bus, and he says, I have kids every morning getting on with, they have brush on the back of their sweater. They just came out of the, so we need to talk about this. We need to talk about what we're doing. And I don't blame I don't blame the sons of bitches that are doing the war anymore. They're always going to be there. They're always going to do what they're doing. Martin Luther King told us the fault is the silence of the good people. Thank you.
You're welcome. Can we make sure that the mics are on? I think it was just a little hard to hear. Can you?
Just press the power button, right?
Yeah. Can you tap the mic? Okay. Marvin, can you tap yours?
Nothing. I'll have to talk louder.
That's all right. We'll get this one. There we go.
Yeah.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark Callahan. I am the Republican candidate in the race running for Congress in Oregon's 5th Congressional District against the current incumbent Congressman Kurt Schrader. People ask me all the time, why are you out there on the campaign trail, Mark? What motivates and drives you to be out there on the campaign trail? I tell them one thing. What motivates and drives me is love. Love motivates and drives me. It's love of country. It's love of family. It's love of getting out there and being motivated to get off the couch, stop watching TV and complaining, and actually get out there and do something about what we're seeing happening to our great nation. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what did it for me. I have a couple daughters myself, Heather and Sarah. They're 14 and 15 years old. And with any teenage daughters, you do get the gray hair on top. I do cover it up with the hair gel though. But the point is, I'm out there because I love this country, and I want to get out there and do something to make it better. As we saw the circus last week and what's been going on in our nation's capital, I got to get out there and do something to make this country better. Both my parents were military. Both my parents were in the Navy. My wife was a Coast Guard veteran. They served this country with honor, integrity, and character. I'm an Eagle Scout myself. I believe in things like honor, integrity, and character. There are things you don't really hear about anymore. They're things of a day gone by. But I tell you, I'm out there to get out there and do something better to make this nation great. Ladies and gentlemen, I am a Republican candidate, yes, but I'm here to represent everyone within the 5th Congressional District. That means Democrats, that means Republicans, that means independents, that means unaffiliated, that means libertarians, even Green Party gentlemen and ladies. I'm there to represent everyone. I'm there to go back there to Washington, D.C., look people straight in the eye, be genuine, be empathetic in terms of representing everyone in Oregon's 5th Congressional District. Even though I am a Republican, as I said, I'm there to represent everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, I love this country so much. I want to help the veterans. My top 3 issues are veterans health care, immigration reform, and tax reform. I'm a limited government guy myself. I believe less government equals more freedom, and that's what I'm there to take to Washington, D.C. My name is Mark Callahan. I'm running for Congress in Oregon's 5th Congressional District. It's going to take all of us within this room to get this done and to make our country great again. Thank you, and may God bless America.
Okay, so we're going to move right into the questions, and my comment did spur a fair number of questions. So, let's see here. None of these are softballs, so let me be really clear about that. So let's just start with, the least softball of all. What does immigration reform mean to you? And we can start with Marvin, and then we'll go with Mark.
The immigration problem we have is because the United States has raped the economies and the cultures of Central America for 150 years. I talked about this the other night in, the banana wars, 50 years of war. The Congress has left the executive and the judicial departments in this lurch. They are trying to cope with, I think there are between 10 and 11,000 people stuck in this due process system we have on the southern border. Well, what can they do about it? Trump is saying, well, let's build a wall. That's a very simplistic answer. We have to create a process to adjudicate if you are a human being and you are in this country, you have a right to due process. So those people have a right to due process. The Congress must act to provide the executive with the mechanics to cope with this problem. But I think Chiquita Banana and Cromwell Law should be sharing some of our expense for dealing with this problem.
Immigration reform to me, it means that if you're going to be here in this country, you have to be here legally, period. I'm on the board for Oregon Immigration Reform. We're the group that's pushing the Yes on 105 vote. I do advocate a Yes on 105 vote because it's about keeping our country safe. It's about keeping those that are not here illegally from hurting us. Ladies and gentlemen, the incumbent, Kurt Schrader, actually voted no on Kate's Law. Kate Steinle was the 32-year-old woman that was killed by an illegal alien down in the Bay Area. He voted no on Kate's Law. He also voted no on the Criminal Alien Gang Member Removal Act, H.R. 3697. Voting no is not keeping our country safe. As I said, I advocate against sanctuary cities. As I said, if you're going to be here, you got to be here legally. Thank you.
All right. The next question is, what strategies do you have to address the ballooning budget deficit? Mark, and then Marvin?
Well, comes down to a checkbook. We can all relate to having a checkbook. We all know what goes into our checkbook. We all know what goes out of our checkbook. It's about being fiscally responsible. And I think it should start at the federal government level in terms of being fiscally responsible and setting the example, leading by example. That's actually something I learned about in Boy Scouts. Leading by example. You have to know how much money you have coming in. You have to know how much money you have going out, not run up the credit card to China in the process. So in terms of addressing the federal budget, we need to lead by example. I advocate, I'm a strong advocate for a federal balanced budget amendment because as I said, leading by example at the federal government level is what we should do. My opponent doesn't believe that way. He actually voted no on the spending cuts to expired and unnecessary programs, H.R. 3, and he voted no on proposing a balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution, House Joint Resolution 2. So he is not a fiscally responsible person. I am. I believe you should lead by example to federal government. Thank you.
Show my chart again. This is the elephant in the room. This says 722 billion. This was Obama's 2017 proposed budget. It's now 717 billion. This is the Defense Department's maintenance. Belligerence is on top of this number. When they fire a bomb, when one of those fighter bombers takes off a deck, that doesn't come out of this budget. This is over and above what the Congress has allocated. It's like the Forest Service gets so much money to manage the forest. When there's a fire, they get a blank check to spend whatever they got to spend to put out the fire. The same thing is going on with this. That's why we're 21 trillion in debt. The interest on this debt is now equals this number. We're paying I think it's, if you multiply 21 trillion times 2.8%, it's about $800 billion. So the banks are doing very well. The defense contractors are doing very well. We're paying for it all. Thank you.
Next, and we'll start with Marvin. This is a two-part question. We'll go a minute and a half, Michelle. We actually have several of these. These two kind of capture it, and they seem to be related to one another, so I'll ask them together. What would you do to try to reduce the corrosive level of partisanship the country has suffered over the last several years? And then, do you think it's possible for political opponents to recognize that each side has valid points?
This is surprisingly easy for me to answer. We have abdicated our political discussion to media. How often do we talk among ourselves about some of these huge issues? We don't. We've abdicated to the media. We need to reestablish political dialogue among ourselves. We need to we are if we're a democratic society, we are the power. We need to retake our power. And it's hard. It's hard to begin with, to break the ice on one of these difficult conversations. But once you're past that, we all want to talk about this stuff. And we don't have, I've talked to people in the back of the room. I've talked to Mark. We don't have this problem. We don't have this partisan anger. That's occurring on the media. It's not occurring among us. So let's talk about these things. Thank you.
Well, as I mentioned in my opening statement, I think it's about telling the truth. I think it's about looking people in the eye. I think it's about getting beyond the partisanship. Partisanship has actually been very paralyzing to our great nation. And it's prevented us from talking to each other. It's prevented us from talking to each other. Give you an example. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Nicole. She has 3 sisters. 2 of them are liberal. 1 of them is conservative. I still talk to them. We're still able to have a conversation. But the point is, back in Washington, D.C., you don't get that. I mean, sure, you have some people back there that are able to cross the aisle, yes. But the point is, for the most part, partisanship has paralyzed our great nation. So that's what I'm saying. I'm there to represent everyone with an open door policy when I go back there to Washington, D.C. I'm there to talk to everyone, not just Republicans, but also, as I said, Democrats, independents, liberals, conservatives. I'm there to represent everyone in Oregon's 5th Congressional District because that's who I am. I want to talk to everyone, look them straight in the eye, listen empathetically. And not just listen to wait for them to stop talking so you can answer, but actually listen to them empathetically on what their needs are, what their concerns are. I'm just a public servant. I will be a public servant. It's not about me. It's about serving the constituents of Oregon's 5th Congressional District. Thank you.
So, Mark, what should we be doing about global warming?
Global warming. Well, that's been called a couple names over the last few years. What was it? It started out as global warming. I guess they changed it to climate change. And I heard on the radio today that apparently we're all going to run out of carbon dioxide or something like that in 11 years. So I don't really put a lot of weight in that. I think that there's actually different types of climate change, I guess if you want to call it that. There's natural and then there's man-made. We can't do anything about natural because you have volcanoes in Iceland, you have China, you have India that are putting out so much CO2. We need CO2 to live, for one. We can't just get rid of all the CO2 because everything will die. But the point is, here in the United States, in terms of man-made global warming or climate change, I think that what we can do about it is negligible because we can't just tax ourselves to death to actually have a solution to come up with a fix for climate change. Taxing ourselves to death for climate change or cap and trade is not the answer. So whether you call it global warming or climate change, it's just not something I think we can have an effect on here in the United States. Thank you.
Well, in the 1970s, the CO2, I think the number was 340 or something like that. And they said, well, if it ever goes over 360, it will become a runaway phenomenon. There will be nothing we can do about it. The number now is at 420. The runaway phenomenon is underway. Now, what can we possibly do about this? I mean, I have grandchildren that are going to have children. What are we going to do about this? We have got our best and brightest in this country are trained to do this, to fight wars in third world countries. Let's use these resources, these best and brightest Americans, to address this problem. I mean, this is suicidal what we're doing. We've got to look at square in the face what's happening and use our resources. Fukushima is, that tragedy, catastrophe, is no different than it was on March 12, 2011. The same amount of, sorry. I mean, you people know about Fukushima. You know about this ocean. You know what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Okay, we'll start with you, Marvin. Do you believe that humans have evolved from other species?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Well, I don't claim to be a philosopher. For one, I'm just running for Congress. I'm just running for Congress. So I'm not a philosopher. I will say I'm a Christian. I do believe in the Lord God as my Savior. I've accepted the Lord God into my heart as my Savior. And I'm not ashamed to talk about that on the campaign trail, actually. So I don't really quite know how to answer that question because I don't have the background to answer it. As I said, I'm just running for Congress and I just want to make the country better. Thank you.
All right, we have two more questions left. Do you believe health, this is a two-parter too, so we can do the minute and a half. Do you believe healthcare is a right, and how can we mitigate the rising cost of healthcare? And I think that should.
So we have a minute and a half?
Yep.
Well, I know that there's people in this room that will disagree with me on this one, but I don't believe healthcare is a right. This is my original Constitution. I've had it for a few years. The cover's kind of come off, taped it back together, but I get a lot of use out of it. And I'm looking in the Constitution here, and I'm not seeing healthcare as being a right. And this Constitution, or the Constitution of our great country, is the owner's manual to our country. Healthcare is not a right in this Constitution, and I don't think it's a right in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, I think if we consider healthcare to be a right, that leads to other things, like the movement for Medicare for all, which will increase taxes and will lessen our freedom in this country. So as I said, I don't believe healthcare is the right. What was the second part of your question? I'm sorry.
How to mitigate rising healthcare costs?
To mitigate rising healthcare costs, I'm actually a free market guy myself. I believe that we can bring costs down by making the market more competitive. Being able to buy health insurance across state lines, being able to invest in health savings accounts. The more competition we have in the healthcare arena, the better, because as I said, companies are going to try to make their healthcare product better, and they're going to try to drive prices down in order to attract new customers. So I'm more for a free market solution in terms of mitigating the high cost of healthcare, as opposed to other solutions that are more socialist. Thank you.
Health is an absolute right in a wealthy place like this. We have made health a commodity. If you have enough money, you get good health. You just look at the people who have terrible dental, their teeth. They can't get adequate care because it is so expensive. I just heard this on the way over here, listening to NPR. In the 1970s, 18-point-some% of the Major League Baseball players were black. Today, the number is 7%. Now, this is an example of, the story was about pay to play. The kids who get to pursue a professional athletic career have to pay to play. So what has happened in this doorway for these black kids, that has closed because it's expensive to go to camps to learn to play ball. So the same thing, we have monetized everything in this country. And there's something wrong with that, something desperately wrong with that. You can measure the quality of a culture by how well we take care of our the least among us. And I'll tell you what, we are not doing a very good job. We need to talk. Thank you.
So this last question is, why are you the best person for this job?
Sure.
Sure. Oh, no, actually, I think it's Marvin's
Oh, it's Marvin's
turn, if
turn?
that's all right.
Go ahead.
My apologies.
Well, I think I'd be very good at it because, at 73, I'm fearless about talking about these things. You can't scare me. You can't scare me off anymore. You can't embarrass me. You can't ridicule me. And I get a lot of that for the things I talk about. People ask me, why are you doing this? Why do you, this isn't going to change anything. Well, it's probably not going to change anything. I mean, this culture has, empires, they develop and they go along and then they decline. We are in the process of decline. But I feel better about talking about this stuff. If you vote for a candidate who is fearless and talks about this stuff, it's not going to make any difference. But you're going to feel better about it. And there should be, this table should be full. I wish you people would file to run. It's very easy to get on a ballot in Oregon. Very easy. And to speak up.
Well, as stated in my opening statement, I'm the best candidate to run because I'm willing to go out there and work for everyone, regardless of social division, regardless of political affiliation. As I said, I am a Republican, yes. And I do have Republican conservative values, yes. But I'm willing to go out there and at least listen to people genuinely, even though I may disagree with them. They may disagree with me as well. I know there's people in this room that most likely disagree with me as well. But the point is, I'm willing to go out there and give it my best shot to represent everyone in the 5th Congressional District. I can't be bought. I'm not a bought politician. What I'm going to go out there to work for is everyone in the 5th Congressional District, not the special interests, not the lobbyists. I'm going out there to work for you in the 5th Congressional District. That's why I'm the best candidate, because I'm willing to cross party lines, listen genuinely and empathetically to people in the 5th Congressional District that I'm seeking to represent. Thank you.
And so now you each have 2 minutes to wrap up, whether it's to raise an issue that you had hoped would be raised that you could address, or to just give your closing remarks. It's how you want to use it, but you have 2 minutes. And we'll start with you, Mark.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you for coming tonight. I really do appreciate you being here and appreciate you listening to us as well as the other candidates who are going to be speaking tonight. As I said, I have a lot of heart and I have a lot of drive and I have a lot of love for this country. I love this country so much. My kids even go with me on the campaign trail sometimes. One of them runs the video camera, the other one passes out the literature. I stand up here in front of the room and teach them about civics, about what this country is about, the great history of our country, the freedom and prosperity of our country that has existed over the past 240 years. Ladies and gentlemen, I want them to be a part of that when they grow up. I want to make them a part of that as they grow up. I teach them about that as they grow up. I tell you, one of the things I really value on the campaign trail, in addition to the oatmeal raisin cookies once in a while, but one of the things I really value on the campaign trail is the before and the after the meeting. Being able to talk to someone one-on-one before and the after the meeting, because that's when you get to know people. That's when you get to know the people that you're going to be representing 3,000 miles away in Congress, along with 434 other people in the U.S. House and 100 other people in the Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, I do this because I care, because I love our country, and I have great love for my family. My name is Mark Callahan. I'm running for Congress in Oregon's 5th Congressional District because I care, because I love our country, and I'm willing to work with anyone, regardless of political affiliation, regardless of social division. Thank you.
Well, I guess this is kind of a new issue. You know, our democratic process is in grave peril. Our Bill of Rights is really eviscerated. I think today's the anniversary of the Patriot Act, which was passed in October 2001. Suspended the Fourth Amendment, suspended the Fifth Amendment. In 2012, the Smith-Munn Modernization Act was passed, which legalized propaganda. The Smith-Munn Act was passed in I think it was in 1947 or 48, to keep the Russians from propagandizing Americans. Well, now we have allowed our media to propagandize us. Okay, the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, released the Pentagon to propagandize the American public. This happened in 2013. The discussion then was, well, don't worry about it, there's no funding. The National Defense Authorization Act that was passed in 2016 funded it. So now our Pentagon is propagandizing us. I mean, you watch the major media news, they all tell the same story. You know, we had this great purge of the internet that happened this spring and this summer, where all those YouTube channels, those people that were doing independent reporting, independent investigations, they were all purged. And then they came back. They came back, a few at a time, few at a time, few at a time. Well, those sites are now intimidated. I don't know if any of you talk about controversial things on the internet. You notice the shadow banning and I mean, this is happening. Our First Amendment now it's under assault. What in the hell can we do? We got to start talking to one another about these things. We got to quit being afraid to talk to one another.
Okay.
So anyway, very encouraged. Thank you very much.
Will you both be around to answer questions
I will,
afterwards?
yes.
Or?
Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'll call up our District 32 candidates. Would you like to keep that?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
excellent.
All right, so we're very lucky to have all 4 candidates for District 32 here this evening. And so we will start at the far end of the table. I will say that the candidates for District 10 are at a distinct advantage over you because the questions are the same. So just remember what you're saying might be helpful to other people. And so we will start with Randall and then work our way down the table. You each have 3 minutes. You'll get signaled by Michelle as you get towards certain benchmarks in your speech. As someone brought up, you do not need to use all 3 minutes. It's quite all right. So we will begin.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Randall Carlson, and I just got the invite here this afternoon due to my late registration. So I made it across town. I work in the Portland area, so I had to hurry and get over here. So I appreciate you all coming out here and coming to listen to everybody here. I actually come as a fairly new resident to Tillamook. I've been here about 3 years. I transferred up here from work. I've normally been in the Southwest, but I have traveled all over the world. I'm a project manager for a large engineering firm. I've been to small third world countries. We've done anything from large semiconductor plants all the way to small wells for people who don't even have a village well. I've done all kinds of different things and can bring that to the candidacy here because one of the platform stands that I run on is getting rid of the labeling, getting rid of the Republican, Democrat, Independent. I want to return this back to what are the people capable of. I want to get the conversations out there. As I lived here for almost 3 years, I had very, very little input from what were the mayors doing, what were the representatives doing. There wasn't a good city hall meeting. There wasn't anything. Granted, our current senator for the area here, Betsy Johnson, she has been doing a pretty good show, but that's it. And it's very small, it's very lacking. One of the things I want to do is to actually make and empower the little people that are close, I say little people, just loosely, but the people that are closest to the problems. I don't want them to have to run to the government far away and say, hey, we have this problem, solve it for us. No, I think we need to empower those in local communities to be able to handle more things. I have many plans to do that. I know we have lots of industries out here that are in trouble. Our fishing, we have issues with their fish returning, the rivers, how they flood, our roads getting over the pass, the issues with the rentals and hotel and tourism through here. There's lots of different issues, and I'm afraid if we send it all off to someplace far away, even Salem, that it's going to be addressed by people who don't live here, who don't understand the issues. And I lived here for enough time to see that that is lacking, and there needs to be things done. So I think we're down to almost 30 seconds. I'm going to end it right there. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Tiffany Mitchell and I'm running to be your next state representative. And when I think about how lucky I am to call this place home, my husband and I moved up here a little while ago because we both loved this area and wanted to call it home. I remember how it wasn't always that easy for me. I grew up as the child of a single mother, my sister and I, and my mother instilled within us this idea that we had to work hard for everything that we had. Yet even with academic scholarships, I still had to take out massive student loans to be able to go to college and get an education. I have had to pay more than half my income on rent, and I've had moments in my life where I've had to make really tough choices just to make ends meet. And that's ultimately what is fueling my run, because at the end of the day, when I see so many people suffering and living paycheck to paycheck, sometimes working even 2 to 3 jobs, seeing that out here on the North Coast with so many of my friends, neighbors, and fellow North Coasters, that to me is just something that I find to be unacceptable. And as someone who has worked in social work for the better part of 10 years, first in unemployment insurance, and now I work in self-sufficiency, I've been working with people who are going through some of the toughest times in their lives, and that has has really fueled me to want to try to do everything that I can to possibly make that better, and that's getting involved on a state level in a position to be able to really have an impact on crafting policies and laws that really have the potential to make life better for people. Some of the things that I really hope to focus on are working class issues that I believe impact people the most. First and foremost, housing, which we all know is a huge issue statewide, but I think it's particularly more complicated out here on the coast where we have a lot of unique circumstances. Things like vacation homes, second homes, and all of those issues combined with the fact that Tillamook is also not very well funded when it comes to that area. So I really want to work to make sure that this area is livable again so that the people who work here can actually afford to live in our communities. Secondly, healthcare, which for me, I've had moments in my life where I've had major issues happen and didn't have health insurance and couldn't get to a doctor. And that's an incredibly stressful experience that no one should have to go through. And so really focusing on making sure that healthcare is affordable to everyone in our state is something I'm very passionate about, as well as expanding mental health and substance abuse treatment out here on the coast where we have virtually no services. And finally, education. I think every student in Oregon should have the ability to get a good quality education, regardless of their background and economic status. And I'm going to work to make sure that out here on the coast, we expand vocational and technical training to make sure that in addition to college, people have those options to best support their aptitudes. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Benita Lauer, and I'm running for candidate for House District 32, obviously. A little bit about myself is I immigrated from Delhi, India at the age of 5 to Eugene, Oregon. I grew up in Olympia, Washington, where I raised my daughter, and both my sons, which is really handy for them because they're all 3 of my kids. While working for the Washington State Department of Transportation, primarily in federal appropriations, state legislation, constituent relations, and tribal governments. In 2004, I married that handsome lug back there. And in 2006, after my youngest son graduated high school, I joined my husband in Beaverton, which is where he lived, and went to work for the Beaverton School District as an instructional assistant, mostly in the special ed classrooms, and pursued my bachelor's in human development from Warren Pacific College and my master's of teaching in George Fox. 2013, I took a short break, went to India, came back and accepted a rest of the year term at Warrenton, where I taught for the year, and then I worked at Nike for the summer, and now, then I had the opportunity to go work for Oregon Virtual Academy, which is a virtual public school, and I'm still there. Started my 5th year, and this year I'm teaching English and English as a second language, so it's been a lot of fun to do that. The last several months, I've had an opportunity to travel the district, and I spent a lot of time down here in Tillamook, and I'm kind of feeling like the Academy Awards here because there's so many people that I got to meet, so many wonderful, amazing people to hear their stories that I want to kind of, I'm going to cheat off my notes just a little bit because I don't want to forget anybody on the Academy Awards thing, right? But, I got the chance to meet with, we can't give me the 1 minute when I'm doing the Academy Award thing, right?
I figured it was appropriate.
Yeah. But Joe Yank and Derek Josie and Chad Allen, hearing their stories about the struggles that they face in running their dairy farms and all of those things that they have to do. And Commissioner Bartline helping me answer some questions and helping me understand Tillamook more. Commissioner Josie, the conversations I've had with him, and Commissioner Yamamoto going on the tour in Tillamook with me to understand the timber industry more and the timber harvesting, the shellfish hatchery at Whiskey Creek, and Saltman, can't remember Saltman's name. Jacobson, yes, great salt. And and Gordon at the Sheriff Department helping me understand what a tremendous job you guys are doing here with the emergency management. And then finally, the Oregon Food Bank and helping you guys aren't just they're not just feeding the people here in Tillamook County, but they're helping to come up with solutions to, for the food insecurity that a lot of people here in Tillamook County struggle with. And so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Hi folks, my name is Brian Alverson. I live in Rockaway Beach, and first off I'd like to apologize for how I'm dressed today. I got up at 5 in the morning this morning. I worked a 8-hour shift. I work at Camp Magruder in Rockaway. I don't know if anyone knows where that is. We actually fed around 200 outdoor school kids today, so I didn't feel like putting on a suit today. I hope you'll forgive me for this one. But I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I serve as a planning commissioner in Rockaway Beach. I have a strong connection to the North Coast. My family, or my mother's family, homesteaded to the Nehalem Valley in the 1870s. On my father's side, around the turn of the 20th century, his great-granddad actually fled indentured servitude when the Norwegian ship he was docked on in Astoria was in port, and he saw his chance and he took his freedom. So we have a strong connection to the North Coast. But regardless of your family's background, whether you're a 4th-generation Oregonian like me, or whether you're brand new to the state, I want to work on your behalf to increase access to health care, improve the quality of life for everyone, make our schools better. And I want to tell you about the main 2 planks of my platform. Income inequality is out of control. The rich are getting richer, while working Oregonians' wages have been stagnant for 4 decades. Now that's with the recent exception of Oregon's minimum wage increase, which has actually helped working people. It is not acceptable that the top 1% hold as much wealth as the bottom 90%. So what are we going to do about it? I support increasing taxes on wealthy individuals to help pay for education, for health care, for public services, for roads, bridges. I also support increasing taxes on corporations who are now reaping the benefits of a robust economy but aren't paying their fair share. Oregon actually has one of the lowest business tax burdens in the nation, and as a result, corporations like Comcast and Nike are not paying their fair share. And number 2, our state is in desperate need of campaign finance reform. We're one of just 7 states in the nation that don't have limits on statewide elections, how much you can donate and how much they can spend. So that's why we're seeing floods of money pour into our elections, into the gubernatorial race, even into the state house race. It's unfortunate, but there can be something done about it. I support putting limits on campaign donations. In the same vein, actually, Multnomah County did this in 2016. Portland's voting on it 2018 this year. And we're actually working on an effort at the statewide level to get limits on expenditures and donations to statewide campaigns. So with that, I will just say that you can read more about my campaign at brianfororegonhouse.com. And thank you all for coming out tonight. This is really important.
So with each question, we'll just move down. So you'll answer the first question, and we'll go down, and Anita will start, and so forth. So the first question is,
And
how
it's
do you?
1 minute, right?
It is, correct. How do you propose we get affordable housing built?
Okay, so that's a very obviously important thing, not just in our district, but in the entire state. And there's different needs in different places, obviously. So on the North Coast here, we obviously have a lot of vacation homes. And the question is, what do we do about that? Well, there's a lot of these homes that are just sitting vacant and sitting empty, and maybe they come down once a year. Well, how do we incentivize these people to sell it? Well, the issue has been raised, possibly a vacancy tax would be an idea. So if a home is sitting vacant for a certain period of time, then potentially tax might move the owner of that home to sell that home. And then there's also other solutions. You know, I think it would be a big haul, but a necessary haul, that we invest in public housing, because far too often when we invest in what we call affordable housing, it's really just handouts to real estate developers, and the best, most efficient way we can actually build housing is in the public sector.
Okay. Thank you. Affordable housing, as well, you guys all know, it's been a struggle, not just here on the North Coast, but also throughout the state. And one of the things that is an issue is that there's a couple of things. One is the permitting costs are astronomical. It's just very expensive to build. It's to go through all that permitting process. And then second, oops, I lost my train of thought. there. That is the second one, but, contracting, third-party contracting. A lot of times what we're requiring our counties to do is have in-house specialists. When we could do third-party contracting, and they could serve at a cheaper cost. And the other thing is, can you guys put your phones down? Can you put your phone down, please?
No, that's they're live streaming this for Facebook,
okay.
right?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Affordable housing, and there we go.
Maybe in your closing remarks, you might be able to touch on it. Sure.
If you want to give her like another 15 seconds,
Do you have a wrap up, Benita, or would you like to take advantage of a little bit more time at the end?
Okay, out of fairness, if you want to.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
All right. Anyway, so affordable housing is obviously one of those big sticky issues that, as I mentioned in my introduction, is affecting the entire state. But I think especially out here on the rural North Coast, we have some major issues, and even out here in Tillamook, I think it's even harder because for population size, funding just isn't there. So for me as a state representative, I really want to make sure that I get to work with the county commissioners in this area and other representatives on a state level to make sure that we actually funnel more money into this county and Clatsop, where I'm from as well, this entire district, because it's all important. But to really make sure that we work hand in hand with people who have great ideas for getting more money into these areas and working with the housing authorities in these areas to make sure that more affordable housing gets built, and that we also end what is called a no-tenant eviction, so that people aren't getting kicked out of their houses just to have the rent raised. I also support the measure on the ballot this year to try to help make it easier for private money and state money to be commingled to create affordable housing. Thank you.
Hi there. Affordable housing isn't going to be helped by charging people more taxes across the country to come here and put into the community. We need to look at why it's unaffordable. We have high contracting rates because of the labor unions that mandate people's wages. We have high cost of materials because of the distance and delivery out here. Some of these things we can do things about, but I think we need to look at the common sense. It doesn't take one person to have to sit here and build 15 houses, and that burden has to fall on that one. We can make community efforts through here. The AAUW unites to build for particular things. Granted, they don't build houses, but it's that same mentality to where we can empower the local people to come together and create segments, create tracks, where maybe we do 3, 4, 5 houses at a time, and then those proceeds go on to do something else. But these can be community efforts that can help. We don't need to sit here and take money that raises tax money on everybody else. We're trying to avoid taxes.
Benita, we'll start with you. And this is a very appropriate question given our venue this evening. Can you share your views on supporting community colleges in Oregon, especially rural ones?
Yeah, absolutely. I think community colleges rock. I worked as at Oregon Virtual Academy. Part of the time what I did was I worked as an advisory teacher, and I worked with juniors, and I think that the programs that we have at our high schools where we can have the expanded options where students in high school can go to the community colleges, they work in tandem with the high schools to help the students get to move forward and potentially graduate with their high school diploma as well as their associate's degree is awesome. So I absolutely support community colleges. Thank you.
All right, I was actually speaking to the president of the college a little bit earlier before we started tonight about my opinion on community colleges, and I think they're great. They are really a gem out here on the rural North Coast to give kids an opportunity to not only get a degree before going to a 4-year university, but to get a degree that isn't going to cost them $40,000 when they get done with their first 2 years. It also gives kids a really great opportunity to explore their aptitudes and their interests before getting into a 4-year degree and meddling around and trying to find themselves. As someone who has a lot of student debt and did that themselves. So I fully think that community colleges are great, especially for our kids out here who don't necessarily have the same opportunities to move to a bigger city to go to a four-year school immediately right after high school. So it provides them with an amazing, affordable option to really develop themselves and their aptitudes.
I too also totally love college, whether it's community college or not. Community college are nice because they can be put into rural areas where they can specialize their class structure around the classes that are there, or the people in the community that's there. For instance, agriculture out here in the farming community, you wouldn't want to take rocket science out here. Although, however, I am surprised the Tillamook School District out here really does have a really good robotics program, so I gotta give them that. But I think we need to look, there's a lot of different things that caused education prices to raise. I remember when we had $26 a credit hour years ago, and I went to University of New Mexico, and over the course of about 8 years, when the lottery was actually instilled, it went to 126, and then when they made it the nationwide lottery, it went to almost $900 a credit hour. That's ridiculous. The population didn't really grow that much. They didn't really expand that much, but prices went up simply because the dollars were available.
Well, I'd just like to say I actually went to Clark College in Vancouver, and while it doesn't have community in the name, it is a community college, and I'm very proud of that. And I'll say that it actually offered me a lot of opportunities that at my income level I wouldn't have otherwise had. A lot of the teachers there were professors at places like Portland State, even the University of Portland. So I was actually very lucky. Community colleges are a great resource, but in Oregon I'd like to see us open up what we have now of free college tuition for kids coming out of high school. I'd like to see that extended to people who have been downsized, who have been laid off, so that they can go back and get training, get a college degree, and get educated in another field, particularly in math and science. So I'd like to see more investments from the public level to get people into community colleges.
So this question didn't have any parameters around it, but I'm going to put parameters around it so that you can actually answer the question in 1 minute. What are your top 3 goals for your district, in this case District 32, and your plans to achieve them? So Tiffany?
So my top 3 priorities for the district are to really, I think, pursue some of those topics I mentioned in my introduction, which is first and foremost to really try to increase the stock of affordable housing out here and to make sure that we take steps necessary to make our communities livable again. The other issue that I think is really important is to make sure that healthcare is accessible to everyone. I do think that healthcare is a right, and that everybody should be able to see a doctor when they need it without having to worry about financial ruin. And additionally, making sure that we expand mental health and substance abuse rehabilitation options out here on the coast, because again, we have virtually no services. Finally, with education, I believe strongly that we need to have stable funding in this state for our education, and we just simply don't have it. And a big part of that is going to be making sure that we raise revenue in this state from the largest corporations in our state who need to pay their fair share in taxes to make sure that our kids have the opportunities they need to succeed.
Okay, 3, wow, it's gonna be hard to limit. One of the things that I see every day driving down the road is the timbers, or the lack of timber on some of the mountains. So that's one of the things I want to address, and that is going to take quite an effort. One of the other natural resource things that I want to do is the fishing. There hasn't been a real good ecological revampment of what happens with the fish returns. We've avoided dredging, we've avoided work in the bays and the streams and the rivers, all because we're afraid of this. And I think we need to take a second look and see what we can do to increase those numbers. Roads and bridges, I've got 15 years of road and bridge design experience. I'm very close to that nature. I want to look at that because I know there's much more that can be done. I know the costs of it. I know how long it takes to get done. And a lot of people have been dragging their feet.
So I mentioned actually the first two in my opening statement, but I'll reiterate. Income inequality is out of control. Again, the rich are getting richer while working people's wages are nearly stagnant for the last 40 years. And so, you know, one thing, you know, we talk about is, you know, union wages. In Oregon, actually, they're 30% higher union workers than non-union workers. And that doesn't just affect union workers, that helps non-union workers because it rises all boats. And of course, campaign finance reform, one of 7 states in the nation with no limits. And then finally, climate change. You know, we're talking about the timber industry, but there's going to be trouble if we don't tackle climate change for the timber industry, for the maritime industry, for all these industries that we hold dear here on the North Coast. And our way of life, it's at stake here. We've got to do something. We can't just put our head in the sand and say that it's not happening, say that, well, if it is happening, we can't do anything about it. No, we can, and we should.
Thank you. For me, I'm very passionate about transportation because I have my background as well, and education as well as, well, first of all, education. We have a high number of absenteeism, and that correlates, especially amongst our juniors and seniors, and that directly correlates to our graduation rates. And so it's very important for us to get those students engaged in their education. We have a high need for trade workers. And let me touch real quick on transportation as well, which is we have a lot of needs. We have culverts that need to be replaced, culverts that need to be cleaned out, bridges that need to be seismically retrofitted. Cell service on Highway 6 is non-existent, and so much more that I know I'm running out of time, so I'm gonna go ahead and finish that up. But one specific thing is Seaside and Warrenton cannot evacuate without going over a bridge. And our bridges are crumbling. They need to be seismically retrofitted. We need turn lanes for safety. And there's a lot of need there. And we bring in a lot of income, especially Tillamook, as for our revenue that contribute to the state. We're not getting our fair share back. And that's something that we need to do. Thank you.
Before you ask your next question, some of us in the back can't hear some of you, so either make sure your mic is on and that it's close to your mouth, and or that you use your voice, use your outdoor voice.
Thank you.
So, we have one more question, and then our softball that we're giving everybody, which is why you're the best candidate. But before that, we're going to ask you what strategies you have to address our ballooning state budget.
So, is this start with me? Sorry. Yeah, so, you know, I've already kind of mentioned, you know, we have one of the lowest business tax burdens in the nation. So if we wanted to look at raising revenue, that'd be a good place to start. Particularly raising taxes on large corporations like Nike, like Intel, like Comcast. But we also have a lot of tax loopholes on the book. The Oregon Center for Public Policy has identified over 350 tax loopholes. And there was one in 2015 passed when Google Fiber was going to come into Salem, and they were going to build a big facility. And actually, Google Fiber never came to Salem. The tax loophole is still on the book. And right now it's being used by Comcast, a very profitable, very large corporation, to skirt millions of dollars in taxes each year. So we have a lot of problems, you know, with the tax code, and I think that'd be a good place to start.
Great, thank you. Ballooning state budget. You know, we have one of the highest revenues that we've had in a long time. But the important thing is coming together across the aisle and coming up with bipartisan solutions. Coming out here and hearing your stories, knowing what your needs are, what the state needs are, and again, working together to come up with solutions is what's critical. We cannot, there's too many partisan decisions being happening currently right now in the state legislature, and we really just need to come together. We need to hear each other. We need to come and bridge those differences together and find out how can we work together to find solutions that's best for House District 32 as well as the entire state. Thank you.
So I actually do agree that we do need to come together and find bipartisan solutions to the issues that we face here in Oregon, especially when it comes to the budget. That said, the fact still stands, as Mr. Alverson pointed out, that we have one of the lowest corporate tax rates in the entire country. And as someone who really believes in fairness and who pays my fair share in taxes, I think that it's only fair that we can ask some of our largest community members to also pay their fair share. And I honestly think that that is the only way that we're going to really be able to address the obligations that we have as a state to not only our multitude of social services, to our infrastructure, but especially to our students, since we lag behind so much in education, where so many students are dropping out of high school. So I think really just to make sure that we have the opportunity to solve the multitude of problems we have in our state, including the budget, making sure that we hold everyone accountable to paying their fair share is key in making sure that we start that process.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna end the bipartisanism. There's more than two parties out there. That's one of the things I want to get rid of in the government. I think that has caused a lot of stalemates back and forth. I think the government can't operate without spending money, and it's our money, not government's money. We need to actually sit here and watch these rules being made. We don't need non-constitutional entities like corporations and businesses getting away with loopholes. We need to have a tighter rein on businesses. But at the same time, we don't have to have as many entitlements as what's out there. There's people, it's a whole different issue. You guys know what's there. But I think we need to look at both ends of it. We need to reduce the overhead that government causes. At the same time, we need to reduce the taxations on the individuals, and we need to look at those that are making money who are not constitutionally protected like businesses. We need to actually look at increasing and making sure that there aren't the loopholes and getting away with stuff.
So, I should have done this with the last group. Really, your last 2 minutes are also sort of your, this is why you should vote for me moment. So we're just gonna wrap that last question and allow you to use your 2 minutes to take advantage of the audience sitting in front of you to convince us why we should vote for you. So we'll start with you, Vanita. Okay.
Well, I have a unique set of skills, and I'm not afraid to use it, as Liam Neeson says. But I want to share a story with you. And as a teacher, I like to give a writing assignment. And it's to write to their future selves. And when I was working at Warrenton, I gave this writing assignments to my 8th grade students to write to them future selves, their hopes, their dreams, who they wanted to be when they graduated high school. And then I had them given to me in self-addressed envelopes, which was challenging because they didn't know how to do that. And then mailed it to them, and they were to put them away until they graduated high school, which was just this last June. It's kind of cool. I got to be at graduation, which was not expected, and then I got to be with one of my students when she opened her letter. And it was so cool to see the look on her face go from what was I thinking to the pride at having accomplished that goal that she had set 4 years ago. But let me get back to my story about this young man who was also my former student, and I had, let's just say he was pretty true to who he was in the classroom. But I noticed a significant change in him. And he'd gone to military school and got a haircut and did some changes. And when I reached out to him and congratulated him, asked him what prompted those changes, he said that it was that letter. He had written it to himself. In 8th grade, he read it the year before, so his sophomore year, and he realized that his younger self, he was going down a direction his younger self had not wanted him to go down to. And I share this story with you for 2 reasons. One is that I think we take for granted the positive effect that we have when we come together and help each other. And second, when I think about the direction we're headed, I have to wonder if our past selves will be happy with where Oregon is headed. Or is it time now to reevaluate, chart a new course, and that's why I'm running. And as a mom who raised her children before pursuing my education, sending my sons overseas to serve our country, I know I'm ready for this challenge. I know that we can come together, work together as a team to make a positive change in this state, in this district. And I thank you for your time.
Okay. So, as I mentioned in my introduction, I'm really running in this race because for me, as someone who has been working in social services and working with people who are going through really tough times in their lives, for me, it's been really disconcerting to see so many people, not only in that position, but seeing so many people just right on that precipice of being in that similar situation of needing to access the social safety net programs that we have in this country. And for me, I really just want to change that. And I know that there are a lot of people in this room, myself included, who have always complained about politics. And I finally decided that I was going to do something to change that. And that is what prompted me to run, so that I could make sure that I would be able to make a difference here in Oregon for people like myself, and to give people an opportunity to really vote for someone who wants to make a positive difference in the lives of people, wants to make sure that people can get education, get a good education at any stage in their life, but especially, one that is something that will help them move towards their future careers and their best selves. Making sure that everybody who needs to be able to see a doctor has the ability to do so without facing the idea that they might go bankrupt in doing it, and that we just really give people an opportunity to succeed here in Oregon. And so I think that if I were to ask anybody to vote for me, it would really be just to say, as someone who has what I would consider a lot of integrity and the real desire to create an Oregon where we can all live and benefit, I really think that I am that best person for the job because I have that experience to what it's being, to true life. So, thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. I'm not a career politician. I'm not a career spokesman, but I am a problem solver. That's what I do as a living every single day. I see the problems that are out here that surround us as we go up and down the coast. We can see them on the roads, schools, the businesses, and the homes. The problems are all around us, and they haven't just suddenly popped up. They've been here for years. The current path that we've been going down has not worked. We need solutions. We need somebody who's used to making solutions come from outside the box. That's what a project manager does. That's what I have done. I do that every single day. I think I'm the best candidate for this position just simply because I'm not a career politician. I don't know all the different things. I'm learning some of this stuff as I go, but I'm a member of this community. I care for this community. I go up and down, spend my time up and down this coast. I love this. That's the reason why I wanted to run. I saw a need. There hasn't been the connection between government and the people. I want to create that connection. I grew up in a community where we had plenty of town hall meetings. Every other week you could talk to the representatives, to the governors, et cetera. They did stuff like that back then. We don't do that now, and I think we need to. I don't post signs all up and down that blow out and make trash. I haven't made tons of, all kinds of litter, as it's been referred to, because I get my name out there about the problems I solve and the way I solve them. I'd love to talk to anybody around through here about particular problems in our community. If you guys have questions and answers, let's talk, because I'm even helping now outside the race. We don't need this race to be good citizens. Thank you.
So I'll just reiterate, I serve on the Rockaway Beach Planning Commission, and actually you can probably see my United Paws Tillamook sweatshirt tonight. I volunteer with United Paws, so I'm very much an active member of this community. Win or lose, I'm still going to be that way. I love this community, so I really appreciate all you guys coming out tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I really just want to say that if you elect me, you'll have someone in Salem who's going to fight on your behalf, not for the wealthy and well-connected, not for special interests and large corporations. I plan on picking up the phone when you guys call. I plan on doing town halls at least once every other week when the legislature is not in session. I want to be the most accessible politician in Oregon if elected. I want to be there for you and all of your concerns, and I think A lot of times, I talked about campaign finance reform, I talked about all the money that's been flooding into these elections. Left out of that conversation a lot of time are the individual people, and I can't necessarily name check all the different county commissioners I've been talking to, or all the different big politicos I've been talking to, but I've been out there talking to regular folks, and I know real struggle, because I've been through struggle. So I think it's important that we elect someone to the State House that has your cares in mind, and I'd be that person. Thank you.
Now we'll bring up District 10 State Representative candidates. Okay, so you have 3 minutes for your opening remarks. If you don't want to fill them all up, you certainly don't have to. So we will start with Tom.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Donohue. I'm currently the chair of Tillamook County Republican Party here. I've done that for about 8 years. I'm a veteran and I'm a staunch supporter of the Second Amendment. And both of those issues are very important to me. However, what really drives me in this campaign is the financial situation that our state is in. Now, I don't know if you realize it, but the state of Oregon is $35 billion in debt. $25 billion of that debt is the unfunded liability for the public employees retirement system. And the other $10 billion is from the simple fact that even though we had the highest revenues in the last few years each year, and it's currently at about $40.7 billion, we're spending $51 billion. That means that in just another year, we'll be somewhere like $45 billion. Raising taxes, a tax or a cap and trade bill, or getting rid of Measure 5 and property tax limitations, or rescinding the kicker tax is not going to solve our problem. Our problem is we are spending too much money in Salem. We need to do something about that. Our bureaucracy is bloated, and it's mostly in middle management where we are bloated. So we need to stop spending so much money. It's all I hear is raising taxes, raising taxes, raising taxes. That's foolish. That's foolish. We've got to stop spending.
So I will ask that if you're going to stand up, because I bet you think you're loud, Tom, but you're not. And so if you can either pick up the microphone or just kind of keep it closer to your mouth, and same for you, Representative. So next.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa. Thanks to the organizers tonight, and thanks to all of you for coming out. I particularly want to thank those of you that live south of here for honoring me with the responsibility of representing all of you in Salem. And that's a responsibility that I take very, very seriously. We're going to get into the issues in a couple of minutes. I've heard some good questions. We're going to talk about finance, taxes, and expenses. I wanted to do something a little bit different in my introduction, and that is I wanted to say to you, I am not one of those legislators that goes off to Salem for a couple of months every other year, never to be seen again. I answer my emails. I send out regular newsletters, which many of you get, which I write myself, and I show up. I show up because I think that's the most important thing that a representative can do, which is to be available, to listen more than they talk, and to be there to build a relationship, to understand what your daily lives are like, and to try and make a difference in them. And that is why you see me in Oceanside, and Netarts, and Tierra del Mar. That's why you see me in Cloverdale, where I'll be speaking tomorrow night, or Pacific City, where I'll be speaking the night after that. And that's why you see me in your schools and in your Chamber of Commerce meetings and at your parades or at your Farm Bureau meetings, because showing up is the most important thing that a legislator can do. And I'm pleased to say that the people are seeing that same trend in Walport and Toledo and Newport and Lincoln City and over in Sheridan and even over in Falls City. Showing up is the most important thing that I can do. You know, we're talking about big issues here, but we're also talking about things that affect people's daily lives. And I did not get elected by all of you to vote with the Portland Democrats. I got elected by all of you to get the Democrats and Republicans around the state to vote with all of us. And what that means is, it means that we are working hard to bring regulatory reform to support our dairy industry, to put rangers on top of Cape Kiwanda to save lives, sand control districts in Pacific City, or a new road in and out of Nesquin. Those are things that affect real people on a real day-to-day basis. We're talking about big issues. We're not going to agree on all of those issues. My wonderful wife Susan is here tonight. She doesn't agree with me all the time, and I hear about that. But we can certainly respect each other in those conversations. We can work together. We can find compromise. 30 years of marriage has taught me that compromise is not losing, that we can all work together to make Oregon a better place, a stronger place, a more resilient place for not only ourselves and our parents, but also for our kids and our grandkids. Thanks so much.
So we will move right into the questions. We'll start with you, Tom. How do you propose we get affordable housing built?
Well, first off, we have a systemic problem in Oregon in our land use laws. Now, the original land use laws were designed to keep our forests and our agricultural areas available, and that's true. So I know we only have a couple of seconds here to deal with this question, but I just want to say there are a lot of one-size-fits-all is not the way to go. The coast is different from the eastern part of the country than it is in the urban areas. So out here for us, there are a lot of areas that are designated as timber or agricultural areas that really can't be because they're too small a lot or something like that. So we need to start looking at those areas and to take a different look and a different approach to our land use laws.
Well, you know, I tell the folks in Salem that Oregon doesn't have a housing problem. It's got dozens of different housing problems that change wherever you go around the state. And we've got a unique situation here on the coast where we've got vacation rentals, we've got vacation homes, and we've got workforce and family housing. And if you've got a vacant lot, what are you going to build on it? Whatever makes you the most money. So what we need to do is incentivize the kind of housing that we need and want to have here. Now in Salem last session, I voted for changes in our document recording fees that are going to generate about $40 million in money that's going to help affordable housing issues. And I worked with our local commissioner, Bill Bartline, to try and find other ways to generate new revenue that can be used here in our local county on our local problems. But at the end of the day, too many of those programs are designed for big projects and big developments and big companies, when what we really need to do is fine-tune them so that small contractors, small projects, and small infill opportunities are going to be available to us and address the kind of needs that we have here at the coast.
So, Representative, can you share your views on supporting community colleges in Oregon, especially the rural ones?
Well, you know, I've got actually 3 community colleges in this sprawling district of ours, and I was very pleased to receive the first Friend of the College Award from Oregon Coast Community College for my work trying to help them support not only students, but also small businesses that come to them, and also retirees that come for life fulfillment classes, and people that are trying to learn new job skills. Community colleges change lives. We have not done a good job in Salem of providing them the kind of support that they need and they deserve. But I was pleased to support the Oregon Promise program, which is designed to reward Oregon's high school graduates with 2 free years of community college, and that's making a difference. We need more programs like that, and we need more support for our community colleges because they are doing great work for the entire community, and they're doing it in ways that affect people that are retired, people that are trying to change jobs, trying to learn new skills, or trying to begin their 4-year college degree.
Oregon has a long-standing partnership with business and our community colleges, and I especially think there's great value in that, especially when we're talking about apprenticeship programs through trade unions and that sort of thing. I went to Mount Hood Community College for a short period of time before I went in the Army, and I was fascinated by the way things work, but the Army called. But be that as it may, the community college system in Oregon I think is very effective. It's cost effective. It offers opportunities to young people who can't afford a larger, more commonplace universities.
All right. Well, I started getting a little too efficient. Oh, I really did. That's fine. So, top 3 goals for your district and how you plan to achieve them if you're elected or reelected.
Well, my top priority is to do something about our budget. By the way, a budget is nothing more than a wish list. There are realities involved here. For starters, I think, as I mentioned, our bureaucracy is bloated, especially middle management in state agencies and our school districts. So I'd like to see, instead of 4 or 5 layers of vertical middle management in state agencies, have one, just like normal business. The other thing is I'm an advocate for the Second Amendment, of course, so I will work toward making sure that isn't, our rights aren't being infringed. But most importantly, the budget and the way we tax our people, we need to do something about it. We can't just keep taxing people. We've got to quit spending so much.
Well, you know, the first bill I'm introducing in January will be actually a small business tax cut. And we've got many, many challenges ahead of us here, whether it's housing, whether it's supporting our schools, helping our seniors, our vets, or preserving this remarkable environment and the natural resources here. But I want to touch on something that I'm surprised nobody else has talked about tonight. And that is the fact that someday soon, the ground's going to start shaking under our feet. And we need to be better prepared for it. We need to be prepared, we need to be ready to withstand it, we need to be better able to recover it. I'm introducing legislation which is designed to teach our kids how to prepare for natural disasters around the state. Because right now they get 1 hour of instruction a month, which usually means either a fire drill or hiding under the desk. How many of you remember hiding under the desk to prepare for other kinds of pending disasters? We can do better than that. We can teach our youngest kids what to do if mom and dad didn't get home. We can teach our middle school kids what kind of go kits they need, what goes into a go kit, and where they keep them. And we can teach older kids how to help protect the larger community. I think that education is generational. If we teach kids now, they're going to teach their parents later, and we're all going to be better prepared.
And so the next question, and we'll start with you, Representative. What strategies do you have to address, and you both touched on this a little bit, what strategies do you have to address the ballooning budget?
Well, you know, we are bringing in more revenue than ever before, but our costs are going up faster. Our costs are going up faster because of the expense of health care and because of the expense of public employee retirement. And public employee retirement is not a current issue. It's an issue that was decided 30 years ago, and the can was kicked down the road and has landed on us with a thud. And just last week, I met with the Pacific City Chamber of Commerce, who heard from Oregon Business and Industries with a series of proposals on how to address the PERS problem. And they said if all of their proposals were adopted, it would only affect about 25% of the problem. You've heard from other candidates tonight talk about revenue reform. We need to talk seriously about the patchwork of taxes and fees that we have across Oregon and whether it is sustainable to address the expenses that we face. But the other thing I want to touch on very quickly is that I've become the guy in Salem best known for looking at uncollected debt and uncollected taxes. The money already owed to the state of Oregon. People that was a quick 15 seconds.
Yeah, it was about 3 seconds short.
Well, I'll talk more about that later.
So that actually takes us through all the questions. After Tom.
Would you repeat the question?
I
please?
sure will. Thank you, Tom, for not giving me the stink eye on it. What strategies do you have to address our ballooning budget issue?
You already mentioned PERS once again, but our Newt Bueller's idea, and I highly agree with him, is to, right now public employees don't pay into their own pensions. And I am a PERS recipient. I didn't pay one dime into my own pension. That happened, that was set up years ago when we were in another recession, and they decided to, in lieu of wages, the state would pay the 6% into their pensions. So with the legislation in the past 7-8 years ago, they now pay 6% on their medical expenses. That was a negotiated thing, that 6% toward pension, so it can be negotiated again. That's a start. And then for all new hires should be just a 401k type of retirement that the rest of America has. That seems simple.
Okay, now we've answered all the questions that the former candidates had. I realize it felt like it flew, but there were 4 up here and 2 now. So now we'll move into your 2 minutes wrap up, where you tell us why we should vote for you, and also any other points that you feel weren't drawn out by our questions, or that you just want to make sure are reiterated. So I think we started with you, so we'll start with you, Representative.
Well, thank you again. You know, I've been talking really fast because there's so much to say about Oregon and the challenges that lay ahead. We live in a remarkable place, and we need to do all we can to preserve and protect it, not only because our economy depends on it, but because we care about our kids and our grandkids. I'm a small business owner. I think most of you know that. And it brings a unique perspective to Salem, because I don't think there's 5 people in the building that actually own cash registers. And I have these conversations all the time about the kind of economies that we have out here at the coast and what we can do to strengthen them. I found myself now chairing 2 committees in the House. That's interesting because there's only one other person that chairs 2 committees. I chair the Ways and Means Subcommittee on Transportation and Economic Development, which is also co-chaired by our own Senator Betsy Johnson. And I also chair the Policy Committee on Economic Development and Trade, which means I get to talk about what can we do to improve our economy, and then how are we going to pay for it. I'm also serving now in House Democratic leadership. Now that's really interesting because I'm the only member there from outside the I-5 corridor. I'm the only member from outside the I-5 corridor, which gives me an opportunity to bring some of our concerns, some of our ideas, some of our challenges to that I-5 group. Now, I don't always get everything I want, but I promise you that you are being heard there. And that's what I'm looking forward to when we get back in there again in January, is to make sure that our concerns, our issues, our challenges, and our needs are well addressed by Salem, and to make absolutely certain that more money is coming from Salem to you than you are sending from you to Salem. Thanks so very much.
Well, I'm kind of glad, Dave, that you brought up the transportation and issue, because the last economic summit here at the Oregon coast was just earlier last month, and all the House leadership and the Senate leadership were talking about was cap and trade, and or we got to have more money for schools. And cap and trade, I don't know if you understand that, but energy and everything is going to be taxed. If that comes to fruition, that means that transportation, everything we have here at the coast comes via a truck, and that's going to mean that everything is going to go up. So that's not necessarily a good thing. When the average income at the coast is $35,000 and it's $51,000 to $51,000 in the Willamette Valley, Portland Metro, we're not addressing the basic economic needs of our community. So once again, I can't say it enough, you've got to quit spending. And yeah, we all have needs. We all enjoy this beautiful coast that we live in, but we gotta live within our means. And that means taking care of our citizens by taking care of our seniors and our children and our old folks, everybody, but you just gotta do it in a way that you can not depend on the government all the time. We have lots of churches and nonprofit organizations that do a darn good job out there. The local Elks Lodge here is a classic example of how taking care of kids, the hoop shoots and the eye clinic here and everything. So we need to move together as a group. We've been talking about that all evening. Move across party lines. Let's work together. I got no problem with that because that's how things get done. I'm a technical analyst. I look at a problem, I see it, figure out what the problem is and how to fix it. That's why I'll be a good state representative.
Thank you. Thank you both. And now we'll have our two county commissioner candidates come up. So before we get started, this is not indicative of interest in the other races. This is just the race that's most personal for people in the room. So we have a lot of questions. And by a lot, I mean a lot. So I'm going to check in with you at 8 o'clock because that's when we said we would end. But I can assure you we will not be near answering all of the questions. Many are duplicates, and I'm trying to get rid of those, however. So we'll do our best, and at 8 o'clock I'll do a check and see if folks would like to hear their question asked if they haven't already, and then we'll go. All right? So 3 minutes, introductory, and we'll start with you, Mary Faith.
Thank you. My name is Mary Faith Bell. Thanks so much for being here tonight. Thanks for sticking it out for the last group to talk. And thanks to the AAUW and the Headlight Herald for putting this on. This is a great forum. I was looking forward to it. I can tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the Director of Communications and Marketing at Tillamook Regional Medical Center. I served there on the Civic Advisory Board and on the Incident Command Team as the Public Information Officer. Prior to that, I was the Editor and General Manager of the Headlight Herald. And I'm a native Oregonian. I've lived in Tillamook County for 13 years. My son graduated from high school here. He got some college credits at TVCC, and he's now in four-year school at Oregon Institute of Technology in Klamath Falls studying applied mathematics. I am on the Tillamook Area Chamber Board of Commerce. I have been for about 5 years. I've served in all the executive positions there. I'm on the board here at TVCC. It is my pleasure to serve on the board here. I've been elected twice and appointed twice, and I love serving on this board. I want to tell you a couple things that I'm proud about in this campaign. I'm proud that Adam and I have agreed to run positive campaigns because I probably don't even have to explain it because we are all just very weary of negative campaigns, and we like each other. You know, it's a small town. This is a different kind of situation than other races. This is a small town, and we anticipate working on projects together for a long time. So I'm proud of that. I feel great about that. I'm also proud of that I have been able to to dedicate all of the money that's been donated to me for this campaign to spend it all in local businesses. And I'm very proud of that. As a chamber board member, I support local business. I'm passionate about supporting business because our community is as healthy as our economy. And when you spend locally, when you shop locally, there's a statistic that says every dollar moves around 6 times, you know, so the money that a lot of you here in this room have donated to my campaign has gone into local businesses, and so we can assume that's helping people, you know, children go to dance class, and helping people buy groceries, and helping people pay the rent, and helping people pay their copay at the doctor. And so I feel really great about that, and I'm very grateful for all the campaign donations that I've received. Am I out of time?
5 seconds.
Oh, now you are.
Thank you.
So again, I also say thank you to AAUW, to the Headlight Herald, and to everybody for coming out and sticking it out. It's been a long night of politics, but it's been a good night. My name's Adam Schwend. If I haven't had the opportunity to meet you, I am a 4th generation citizen here in Tillamook County. I was born and raised here in a little community south of Tillamook called South Prairie. Went to South Prairie Elementary, went to Tillamook Junior High School, went to Tillamook High School, and then after that went off to Pacific University, where I studied music and political science. And then after that, I went into teaching music, and did that for a bit in the Portland metro area, then decided to go off to the Midwest into Sioux City, and actually taught adults there, and then moved to the Puget Sound area in Seattle, and taught music there as well. But I always wanted to come home. I never thought I'd be able to, but I always wanted to. So when the opportunity came up, when my wife and I were planning on trying to figure out where we were going to live, where we were going to raise a family, we were both from small dairy towns. She's from up in the North Washington area, and of course I'm from here. We wanted to be in a place that we could raise our family with the same values, with the same wonderful experiences that we had growing up. I'm very fortunate to really have grown up in the best place in the world, and I've been with our 2 kids now, with Joey and Lily. We've been able to show them why this is such a wonderful place. And it's been a wonderful place because so many people, as I was growing up, were able to make it a wonderful place. They were able to make the economy what it is. The folks who are working in the forests, the folks who are working in the farms, the folks who are working in our bays and in our rivers as fishermen, those are the people who made our community what it is for me. And we need to continue to make sure that those jobs, that those industries are strong and able to make this community just as strong for my kids, and hopefully my kids' kids, and anybody else who has fallen in love with this community like all of us have. So again, thank you very much for everyone for being here, and I look forward to answering your many, many, many questions.
So this first question, we have multiple variations of it, all with a slightly different tone, but at the end of the day, probably the response is very similar. So I'm going to pick one that comes at it from a little different angle. And then if you'd like me to read some of the other ones, I'm happy to. But so this is, the individual also wrote your names in, so I'm just going to read it. Adam, you have received significant campaign contributions from the Oregon Realtors Political Action Committee for a nonpartisan race. Why do you think that this group has decided you are their candidate?
Sure. I have not been shy about the fact that not only am I supported by my friends, by my neighbors, by my family, by farmers, loggers, fishermen, my 84-year-old grandpa, and everybody else, but I've been supported by my colleagues. I founded a small real estate brokerage here in the North Coast, and these are the people that I work with every single day of my life. I'm on the board of directors for both organizations, and these are organizations this organization for their entire purpose is to make sure that you can buy, sell, and own real estate, private property, with as little government intervention as possible. Private property rights are the heart of what our American Republic is, and it's at the heart of what my belief system is. And so I'm incredibly proud of the fact that I have gotten the support of my colleagues, and I know some folks have tried to make that a political hit, which is unfortunate, because I'm incredibly proud of it.
So Mary Faith, they offered a different spin on that question for you. What views do you have that the Oregon Realtors PAC are concerned about?
Well, that is a nice spin. I am also interested in property rights, and well, that's interesting. I haven't thought about that specifically. What I can tell you is that there are a number of realtors who are supporting me in this campaign, and that my values are, I want to represent everyone in Tillamook County, and including property owners. I want it. It's my dream that it would be possible for young people to live here and move here or stay here and buy homes and raise their families, and that's what I hope to participate in, is the dream of a livable community.
Just for folks who ask questions about specific amounts, all that information is available online. I suspect it might be hard for both of you to come up with specific amounts from different groups to answer that question, but all this is public information. So if we have time, we can get back to some of those additional questions. So that leads us, nice segue, Mary Faith. How do you propose we get affordable housing built? That was a question someone wanted both the commissioners and state reps to answer.
Well, there's good news happening about housing locally, really. There is a lot of momentum in housing. I'm excited about public-private partnerships, and I think public-private partnerships will be essential for us to really move forward. There are some things that I've been talking to people about. So I've been talking to people about their ideas about housing, and collecting the ones that I think are have some legs. And so I talked to people recently about the idea of housing development in Pleasant Valley. And so there are problems with that in terms of zoning, but what was proposed to me was, what about a housing development in Pleasant Valley that was based on a livable community like Hillsborough, with mixed housing, with affordable housing and workforce housing and market rate housing on the bus line, with all the amenities of a community. So I think there's a lot of possibilities right now.
So I think we've all heard how incredibly expensive it is to develop, how system development charges are super high, how permitting fees are difficult to navigate, and how permits are expensive. These are all things we know. We've talked about this for a long time. So I want to talk about a kind of an out-of-the-box idea I've been working on, and I will continue to work on this whether I'm fortunate enough to be elected or not. But it's a concept of a declaration of a housing emergency. One of the frustrations that we've had is zoning, that it's incredibly difficult to be able to navigate Oregon's draconian land use system. So the idea of a housing emergency declaration would be the governor or the local jurisdiction would be able to declare a housing emergency, and that would relieve some zoning requirements. And we can talk about how that would look, of course, but whether it's zoning requirements or land use ratio requirements, that a certain percent has to be put in for industrially. There's a whole bunch of ways that we can get around some of the draconian problems of land use by having working with the legislature to pass a law that would allow for a housing declaration, emergency declaration.
So this is a two-part question, although it leads right into one leads right into the other. So the first part of the question is a yes or no. That's really all the person wanted to hear, but then you'll get to expound a little bit in the second question. So do you want growth and development in the county, yes or no? And then, can you share your views on what you see as goals for the Economic Development Council? So it's very specific. You, sir.
Okay. Yes. And I think the Economic Development Council, EDC, has had some struggles lately. And I think part of it is, I think the leadership that the commissioners can give can be going through a visioning process. I went to a coffee group once, and one guy said, "Schwen, what you need to do is work on economic development." And I said, "Okay, what does that mean to you?" And he said, "What are you, an idiot? This is what it means." And then the guy next to him said, "That's not what that means, it's this." And then the guy next to him had a completely different idea of what economic development was. For some people, it's we need to make sure that we maintain the businesses we have. For some, it's we need more businesses. Some, it's growing the businesses that we have. So I think the first thing we need to do is begin doing a visioning process of what we want. What are the 5 things that we want over the next 5 years to be successes in economic development? That will be deliverables that we'll be able to give to EDC and say, here are your measurables for success or failure. Right now, we don't have that.
Yes, and the EDC, the Economic Development Council, is in a period of transition, and they're about to interview a new director. So I think that's exciting. There's a new energy for it. I think that's great. What I'm particularly interested in is industrial promotion. I'm particularly interested in long-range planning big picture planning for how we could attract industry and business to Tillamook County. And that's what I want to work on. And I had this fun conversation with Richard Stanfill, whom some of you probably know. And Richard put a great ad for me in the Headlight Herald, in the Shopper. If you have a chance to see it, it's lovely. And he said, "You need to sit down and write what Tillamook County needs 20 years from now. You figure out what Tillamook County needs 20 years from now and all the steps it's going to take to get there, because that's your job now." And I thought, brilliant. That's exactly what I want to work on.
Okay, so the candidates have heard this question before at the last forum that was held last week, but there was a request to have it stated again. I have been told that Portland buses people experiencing homelessness to Tillamook because of our plethora of services. How would you respond?
I respond that that's not accurate. We don't have a plethora of services, and Portland does not bus homeless people to Tillamook County. What is true is that that the homeless population is growing everywhere. And so it's distressing to people because they're aware that there are more homeless people here now, and they think, where are these people coming from? They must be coming from out of town. So it's simply not true. And but I've heard this question before a couple times now. And so I talked to Erin Scarr about it. She's the director of CARE, which is the organization that serves homeless people in our community. And she said, no, we do not have a plethora of services. We have very few services. And so when people come here from out of town and they go to CARE to get help, she asks them, do you have people anywhere that we can help you get back to? Because if you came here and you have no one here, you're not going to be successful. You're not going to be okay. You're not going to make it. So CARE, one of their missions is to help people get to any place where they have people, family, or friends who can help them.
So I'd also heard this, and I heard it from a constituent when I was a city councilor in the city of Tillamook. And so first, I couldn't believe it was true, so I went and spoke to Terry Wright, and I asked, is this true? And he said, no, it's not true. People are not being bussed in from Portland. It's not happening. But we do have a whole lot more homeless people here than we have in a long time. And it's because we have had an explosion of homeless people. There's a whole lot of different reasons for that, but one of the reasons is the severe lack of treatment for the folks who have mental illness. It's not people who just don't want to work. That's not who our homeless population is. It's people who are in desperate need of help. And I think the fact that they come here where there is no support for, or very, very little support for folks with mental illness shows that they are not coming here for our plethora of services, because we don't have them.
So, Senator Betsy Johnson secured a semi-truck portable dredge and state funding for responsibly maintaining coastal port waters like work recently completed at the Port of Garibaldi. Will you work with Senator Johnson and the Oregon Legislature to expand the state's dredging projects and budget to include other Tillamook County ports and river mouths, especially when the state dredge is in the county?
Absolutely. One of the issues that we have had is that we have fought to be able to dredge some areas that are in desperate need of dredging. And that's situated because of the number of parties that are going to be attached to that, in some areas the Army Corps, some areas the state, and then of course local requirements. This is going to be one of those all hands on deck things, but we have to do it. We need to be able to deal with the constant flooding issues that we have here in Tillamook County. Now, we've done some great things. We cannot discount the Southern Flow Corridor, all the work that's been done to get the water out as quickly as we possibly can. But we do need to begin taking a look at the fact that there just is no place for that water to go. We need to be able to work together on all levels. I'm very fortunate to have built a lot of great relationships in the legislature, not just with folks who represent us here in Tillamook County, but folks in leadership in both caucuses, and I'd be willing to bring those relationships to bear for something as important as this.
Also, yes, I think that dredging can be responsibly done. It can't be cheaply done. So there's a huge funding issue. I live in Nehalem, and some people in my community, long-term people, have talked to me specifically about the Nehalem River and the growing sandbars in the Nehalem River that make it difficult to navigate. And I can tell you as a fisherwoman that all that extra sand is not providing fish habitat. There are not a lot of fish in the river. And there are a lot of boats, but there are not a lot of fish in the river. And so I think that we should explore that opportunity mainly for flood mitigation, and also it makes a big difference to farmers. I've talked to a couple of different dairy farmers. I talked to Derek Josie about it. I talked to his name just flew out of my head. Somebody up on the Trask about how the not being able to remove sand and rock from their rivers contributes to flooding.
So, little different spin here. So since the recycling issue in North County needs a solution by the end of December, do you expect to work with the current commissioners as you will inherit their results if successful? What would your input to a solution be?
Will you read that again?
Yes, thank you. Since the recycling issue in North County needs a solution by the end of December, do you expect to work with the current commissioners as you will inherit the results? What would your input to a solution be?
Well, the first part of the question threw me because, of course, whomever wins this office won't take their seat until January 2nd. So I wouldn't expect that we would have a great deal of input on a solution that needs to happen in December. However, I certainly have feelings and thoughts about it. I think that what I hope is happening now, I believe in Cardam. I live in North County. I love Cardam. Everyone in North County loves Cardam. And I think that North County needs to have a transfer station. So what I think needs to happen is because the situation, the economics have changed so drastically. What needs to happen